The metal detector's frantic beeping echoed through the quiet suburban morning as Maya Chen knelt in the dirt behind her fence, her heart pounding. What she unearthed wasn't treasure. It was a secret water line running straight from the HOA, President's mansion to the community well, stealing thousands of gallons while neighbors faced water restrictions. But when she knocked on Richard Blackwood's door with the evidence, his face went white as paper. "You have no idea what you've stumbled into," he whispered. Then his expression twisted into something dangerous. 20 minutes later, police sirens wailed down Maple Street, and Maya realized she wasn't just fighting for Maya Chen had lived at 47 Maple Street for 3 years, and she'd never seen her sprinkler system work properly. Not once. While her neighbors enjoyed emerald lawns that could grace magazine covers, her grass remained a patchwork of brown and yellow, despite following every water restriction to the letter. The final straw came on a sweltering Tuesday morning in July, when she received her third water violation notice from the Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association. The fine, $500 for excessive water usage during restricted hours. Excessive? Maya stared at the notice, her hands trembling with frustration. She'd been watering her dying garden with a single sprinkler for 20 minutes at dawn, well within the HOA's stringent guidelines. Meanwhile, Richard Blackwood's mansion 3 houses down boasted a lawn so perfect it looked artificial, complete with a fountain that ran 24/7. Maya had tried reasoning with the HOA board. She'd attended meetings, filed complaints, even hired a plumber to check her system. Nothing worked. The plumber, Joe Martinez, had been particularly puzzled. "Ma'am, your water pressure is practically non-existent," he'd said, scratching his graying head. "It's like something siphoning it off before it reaches your property. But that's impossible. Each house has its own line from the main." That word, impossible, had echoed in Maya's mind for weeks. As a forensic accountant, she'd built her career on investigating things that seemed impossible. Numbers didn't lie, patterns revealed truth, and something about Willowbrook Estates didn't add up. The morning she decided to investigate, Maya borrowed her neighbor's metal detector under the pretense of looking for her lost wedding ring. The device had belonged to Mr. Peterson's late father, a World War II veteran who'd spent his retirement hunting for Civil War artifacts. "Just bring it back when you're done, dear," Peterson had said, his kind eyes crinkling with concern. "Though I hope you find that ring. 30 years of marriage. That's something precious." Maya had smiled and nodded, guilt twisting in her stomach. She wasn't looking for her ring, which sat safely in her jewelry box. She was looking for answers. The metal detector proved more sensitive than expected. Within minutes of starting her search along the back fence line, it began emitting a steady, insistent beep. Maya marked the spot with spray paint and continued her sweep. The beeping followed a clear path, a straight line running from her property toward the direction of Blackwood's mansion. Heart racing, Maya grabbed a shovel from her garage. The summer heat was already brutal at 7 a.m., but adrenaline kept her cool. She dug carefully, methodically, the way she approached everything in life. 2 feet down, her shovel struck something hard, metal. She brushed away dirt with her hands, revealing a pristine copper pipe, easily 3 inches in diameter, far, larger than any residential water line should be. "What the hell?" Maya whispered. She followed the pipe's path, digging small test holes every few feet. The line ran straight as an arrow from her property line toward Blackwood's estate, but more disturbing was where it originated. Maya's investigation led her to a shocking discovery. The pipe connected directly to the community's main water supply, a well system that served the entire neighborhood. But this wasn't an official connection. This was a private line, professionally installed and deliberately hidden. Someone had been stealing water from the community supply for years, possibly decades. Maya sat back on her heels, dirt under her fingernails, sweat stinging her eyes. The implications were staggering. While residents faced increasing water restrictions and rising bills, someone had been helping themselves to unlimited free water. She thought about Mrs. Davidson, the elderly widow 2 streets over who'd been forced to let her prize-winning rose garden die because she couldn't afford the fines. about the young family on Oak Street who'd received a cease and desist letter for letting their toddler play in a kiddie pool during the heat wave. All while someone was stealing thousands of gallons. Maya pulled out her phone and began documenting everything. Photos of the pipe, GPS coordinates, measurements. Her forensic training kicked in. Evidence needed to be preserved, chain of custody maintained. But as she photographed the final connection point near her property line, her blood ran cold. The pipe didn't just run toward Blackwood's estate. Based on the surveyor's markers, she could see it ran directly to his property. Richard Blackwood, HOA president, retired city councilman, and the man who'd personally signed every one of her violation notices, was the thief. Maya's hands shook as she realized the scope of the betrayal. Blackwood hadn't just been stealing water, he'd been using his position to deflect suspicion, creating increasingly restrictive policies that made normal usage seem excessive by comparison. He'd been gaslighting the entire community while literally stealing from under their feet. The afternoon sun was beginning to set when Maya finished her documentation. She'd spent hours tracing the line, photographing every connection, taking measurements. Her forensic mind had cataloged everything methodically, building an airtight case. But now came the hard part, confronting Blackwood. Maya cleaned up, showered, and put on her best business attire, a crisp navy suit that made her feel armored for battle. She printed out her photos, organized her evidence, and prepared her presentation as if she were heading into a corporate fraud investigation. Because that's exactly what this was. The walk to Blackwood's mansion felt like a funeral march. The perfectly manicured lawns she passed now seemed obscene, each blade of grass a testament to theft and corruption. The fountain. In Blackwood's front yard, a gaudy marble monstrosity depicting cherubs pouring water from urns felt like a slap in the face. Maya rang the doorbell at exactly 6 p.m. when she knew Blackwood would be home from his golf game, but before he'd started his evening cocktail routine, she needed him sharp and caught off guard. The door opened to reveal Richard Blackwood in all, his pompous glory. At 62, he maintained the bearing of a man accustomed to authority. Silver hair, perfectly styled, expensive polo shirt, fingers adorned with rings that caught the porch light. His smile was practiced, political, the same one he wore at HOA meetings when denying residents reasonable requests. Maya, what a pleasant surprise. Though I have to say, this is highly irregular. HOA business should really go through proper channels. Cut the crap, Richard. Maya held up her folder of evidence. I know about the water line. The transformation was instantaneous. Blackwood's political smile melted like ice in summer heat. His face went pale, then flushed red, his eyes darting past Maya to scan the street. For a moment, he looked like what he truly was, a caught thief. I don't know what you're talking about, he stammered, but his voice lacked conviction. Maya stepped closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. 3-inch copper pipe, professionally installed, running from the community well directly to your property. I have photos, measurements, GPS coordinates. I know everything, Richard. Blackwood's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. He glanced around again, then grabbed Maya's arm with surprising strength, pulling her inside his foyer. The door slammed shut behind them with a finality that made Maya's stomach clench. You have no idea what you've stumbled into, Blackwood whispered, his grip tightening on her arm. His eyes had gone from frightened to calculating, and Maya realized with growing horror that she might have made a terrible mistake coming here alone. The marble foyer suddenly felt less like a grand entrance and more like a trap. Maya tried to pull away, but Blackwood's grip was iron strong. His political mask had completely fallen away, revealing something cold and desperate underneath. Let go of me, Richard. Instead, he smiled. But it wasn't the practiced political expression. From moments before, this smile belonged to a cornered animal, dangerous and unpredictable. I'm afraid I can't do that, Maya. Not until we discuss how we're going to handle this misunderstanding. Maya's evidence folder slipped from her suddenly numb fingers, photos scattering across the imported Italian marble. As they fell, she caught a glimpse of Blackwood reaching for his phone with his free hand, his fingers flying across the screen. 20 minutes later, the sound of sirens filled the evening air, growing louder as they turned onto Maple Street. But as Maya watched through Blackwood's front window, her blood turned to ice. The police cars weren't coming to help her. They were coming for her. The first police cruiser pulled into Blackwood's circular driveway with its lights flashing but sirens silent, a predator's approach. Maya watched through the massive front window as Officer Derek Mitchell emerged from the vehicle, his hand resting casually on his service weapon. She recognized him from neighborhood barbecues. He lived just 2 streets over in a house with the same impossibly green lawn. "You called them before I even got here," Maya whispered, the pieces clicking into place with sickening clarity. "This was planned." Blackwood released her arm but positioned himself between Maya and the door, his earlier panic replaced by cold calculation. "I've been HOA president for 12 years, Maya. You don't hold that position without learning how to handle problems." "Problems? I'm exposing theft, Richard. Grand theft. You've stolen hundreds of thousands of gallons, allegedly." His voice carried the smooth authority of a man who'd spent decades in local politics. "And who do you think they'll believe? A respected community leader with spotless credentials or a disgruntled homeowner with a history of water violations and unpaid fines?" The doorbell rang, followed immediately by heavy knocking. Blackwood straightened his polo shirt and transformed, back into the concerned neighbor, though his eyes remained fixed on Maya like a hawk watching prey. "Coming, officer," he called, then whispered to Maya, "Not a word about your wild theories. Trust me, it won't end well for you." Officer Mitchell filled the doorway, his presence immediately commanding. At 45, he carried the weathered authority of a 20-year veteran, but Maya noticed something else in his demeanor: familiarity. He and Blackwood exchanged the subtle nods of men who knew each other well. "Evening, Dick. Got your call." Mitchell's eyes swept over Maya, taking in her business attire, the scattered photographs on the floor, her dirt-stained hands. "This, the trespasser?" "I'm afraid so. I came home to find Miss Chen on my property digging holes in my yard. When I confronted her, she became agitated and forced her way into my home with some wild accusations about water theft. Blackwood's performance was flawless. Concerned citizen, reluctant to press charges but forced to protect his property." Maya's mouth fell open. "That's not— I have evidence." "Ma'am, I need you to calm down." Mitchell's hand moved closer, to his weapon. "Mr. Blackwood is a respected member of this community. Now, he says you were trespassing and making threats." "I wasn't trespassing. I was on my own property and I found—" Maya gestured toward the scattered photos, but Mitchell stepped forward, blocking her path. "You found what exactly?" Maya's mind raced. She could feel the trap closing around her, but her evidence was right there on the floor. Photos of the pipe, GPS coordinates, measurements, proof of everything. "Officer Mitchell, I'm a forensic accountant. I've documented a systematic theft of community resources. If you'll just look at these photographs—" "Derek, she's been acting erratic for months," Blackwood interjected smoothly. "Constant complaints, accusations against the HOA board, claims about water pressure. Mrs. Patterson mentioned Maya seemed unstable at the last community meeting." Mitchell nodded as if this confirmed his suspicions. "Ms. Chen, I'm going to need you to come with me. We can sort this out at the station." "Wait!" Maya's voice cracked with desperation. "You live here too, Officer Mitchell. Your lawn is perfect, just like his. You're part of this, aren't you?" The silence that followed was deafening. Mitchell's hand now rested fully on his weapon grip, and Blackwood's mask slipped just enough to reveal a cold smile. "That's a serious accusation, ma'am, accusing a police officer of corruption." Mitchell's voice carried a warning that made Maya's blood freeze. "I think we definitely need to continue this conversation downtown." As if summoned by some invisible signal, a second patrol car arrived. Officer Jennifer Santos emerged, another neighborhood resident whose property boasted the same suspiciously lush landscaping. Maya realized with growing horror that she wasn't dealing with a simple HOA scandal. This was a conspiracy that reached into the local police force. Jenny, thanks for responding, Mitchell called. Got a 1054 here, possible 5150. Maya knew enough police codes from her forensic work to understand suspicious person, possible mental health hold. They weren't just arresting her for trespassing. They were setting her up to be declared mentally unstable. I want to call my lawyer, Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. Of course you do, Blackwood said with fake sympathy. That's exactly what guilty people always say. Santos entered the foyer, her eyes immediately cataloging the scene. Ma'am, I need you to put your hands behind your back. This is insane! Maya's composure finally cracked. The evidence is right there on the floor. Look at the photographs. I documented everything. But as Santos moved to restrain her, Maya saw Mitchell casually kick some of the scattered photos under Blackwood's antique console table. The rest he gathered up with deliberate carelessness, ensuring they'd be inadmissible even if they made it to evidence. Resisting arrest, too, Santos noted clinically, though Maya hadn't moved. Wait, please. Maya tried one last desperate gambit. Officer Santos, you have children, right? I've seen them playing in your yard. Do you want them to know their mother helped cover up the theft of community resources? That you helped a corrupt HOA president steal from their neighbors? Santos paused, handcuffs halfway to Maya's wrists. For just a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Doubt, maybe even shame. But then Blackwood spoke again. Jenny, your kids are on the neighborhood swim team, aren't they? Would be a shame if budget cuts forced us to close the community pool. These facilities require community support to maintain. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Santos's face hardened, and the handcuffs clicked into place around Maya's wrists with finality. As they led her toward the patrol car, Maya caught sight of Mr. Peterson across the street, walking his ancient beagle. Their eyes met through the gathering dusk, and she saw recognition and confusion in his kind face. He'd seen her borrow the metal detector that morning, full of hope about finding her ring. Mr. Peterson, Maya called out desperately. The metal detector. Tell them about the metal detector. But Peterson was 83 and hearing impaired. He waved cheerfully, thinking she was just being neighborly, and continued his evening. Walk. Mitchell opened the patrol car door, one hand on Maya's head to guide her inside. You really should have minded your own business, he said quietly. This neighborhood works because people understand their place. And what's my place? Maya asked through clenched teeth. Mitchell's smile was colder than winter. Silent. The patrol car door slammed shut with the finality of a coffin lid. Through the mesh partition, Maya watched Blackwood and the officers confer on his porch, their body language casual, familiar. These weren't strangers coordinating a response to a disturbance. These were conspirators cleaning up a mess. As the cruiser pulled away from the mansion, Maya caught one last glimpse of Blackwood's fountain through the rear window. The marble. Cherubs poured their stolen water endlessly into the basin below, a monument to corruption disguised as garden art. In the fading light, their stone faces seemed to mock her failure. The radio crackled to life as Santos contacted dispatch. Unit 47 to Central, transporting one female to County General for psychiatric evaluation. Possible 5150, claims of conspiracy and theft. Requesting mental health hold. Maya's heart stopped. County General wasn't the police station, it was the hospital. They weren't just arresting her, they were having her committed. In the psychiatric wing, her credibility would be destroyed, her evidence dismissed as the ravings of a delusional woman. She could be held for days, weeks even, while Blackwood covered his tracks and solidified his story. This is Detective Morrison, a gravelly voice responded over the radio. I'll meet you at County General. Been tracking this one. She's been making similar accusations against city officials for months. Classic paranoid delusion pattern. Maya had never heard of Detective Morrison, had never made accusations against any city officials. But the lie would become truth once it entered the official record. Her forensic career would be over, her credibility destroyed, her evidence worthless. As the hospital's imposing brick facade came into view, Maya realized that finding the waterline hadn't been her mistake. Her mistake had been assuming she was fighting ordinary corruption when she was actually up against something far more sophisticated, a network of complicit officials who'd spent years perfecting their system. The patrol car pulled into the emergency bay, where orderlies and a stern-faced doctor were already waiting. Someone had called ahead, prepared them for a difficult psychiatric patient. Maya saw her future stretching out before her, discredited, medicated, dismissed as just another conspiracy theorist. But as Officer Santos opened the car door, Maya noticed something that sent a spark of hope through her despair. Across the parking lot, partially hidden behind a maintenance shed, sat a familiar Honda Civic. The car belonged to Tom Walsh, an investigative journalist for the local paper who'd been Maya's source for municipal corruption stories in her previous forensic cases. Their eyes met across the darkness, and Tom raised his camera with a telephoto lens. He'd been following the story, had seen enough to know something was wrong. As the orderlies approached with a "we," the psychiatric ward at County General smelled like industrial disinfectant and broken dreams. Maya sat on the edge of a narrow bed in room 314, wearing a hospital gown that felt like surrender, her business suit confiscated as potential self-harm. Materials. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd been investigating financial fraud for 15 years, and now she was being treated like the delusional one. Dr. Patricia Vance entered with a clipboard and the weary expression of someone who'd seen too many conspiracy theorists wheeled through these doors. "Ms. Chen, I'm here to conduct your evaluation. The officers who brought you in mentioned some concerning delusions about water theft and neighborhood conspiracies." "They weren't delusions." Maya kept her voice level, professional. "I'm a forensic accountant. I documented systematic theft of community resources by HOA officials. I have evidence." Dr. Vance made a note. "The police report indicates you were found trespassing on private property, making threats, and claiming that multiple law enforcement officers were involved in some elaborate scheme. Classic paranoid ideation." Maya closed her eyes, feeling the walls of the trap closing in. Every word she spoke in her defense would be twisted into further evidence of mental instability. But staying silent meant letting Blackwood win. "Doctor, may I ask you something? Where do you live?" "I'm not sure how that's relevant. Humor me. It's important." Dr. Vance hesitated. "Riverside Heights, about 10 miles east of here." "Why?" Maya felt a flicker of hope. Riverside Heights was outside Blackwood's sphere of influence, which meant Dr. Vance might actually listen. "Because if you lived in Willowbrook Estates, you'd probably be prescribing me antipsychotics right now." Before Dr. Vance could respond, there was a sharp knock on the door. Detective Morrison entered without waiting for permission, a tall, angular man with dead eyes and the bearing of someone accustomed to intimidating people in vulnerable positions. "Doctor, I need to speak with the patient. Official business." "Actually, Detective, I was just beginning my evaluation. This won't take long." Morrison's tone brooked no argument. Dr. Vance gathered her clipboard and left, shooting Maya a look that might have been sympathy. Morrison pulled up a chair and sat uncomfortably close, his presence filling the small room like a toxic cloud. "Maya Chen, forensic accountant, 34 years old, divorced, no children, lives alone at 47 Maple Street, Willowbrook Estates, moved there 3 years ago after her ex-husband got the house in Riverside Heights." The casual recitation of her personal information was meant to intimidate, but Maya's forensic training had taught her to recognize interrogation techniques. "Is there a point to this, Detective?" "The point is that you've made some very serious accusations against respected members of our community. Mr. Blackwood is particularly concerned about your mental state. He mentioned you've been acting erratically for months." "Define erratically." "Obsessive behavior, paranoid accusations, trespassing, breaking, and entering." Morrison leaned back, confident in his position. "The good news is, we're not pressing charges. Yet. Mr. Blackwood is a compassionate man. He believes you need help, not punishment." Maya laughed bitterly. How generous of him. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay here for the mandatory 72-hour hold. During that time, you'll receive the help you need to understand that your accusations were the result of stress and delusion. When you're released, you'll issue a public apology to Mr. Blackwood and the HOA board. In return, your water violations will be forgiven, and we'll all pretend this never happened. And if I refuse? Morrison's smile was predatory. Then we press full charges. Trespassing, breaking and entering, making terroristic threats to a public official. With your history of mental instability on record, I'd say you're looking at serious prison time. Your forensic accounting license would be revoked, of course. Hard to rebuild a career with that kind of baggage. Maya stared at him, seeing the trap in all its cruel efficiency. They'd thought of everything, except for one detail. Detective, can I ask you something? How long have you lived in Willowbrook Estates? Morrison's confidence flickered for just a moment. What does that have to do with anything? Just curious. You seem very invested in protecting the HOA president. I'm wondering if you have a personal stake in keeping the water theft quiet. There is no water theft. You're delusional. Then you won't mind if I ask Dr. Vance to request an independent investigation of the community water system, just to put my delusions to rest? Morrison stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the linoleum. You really don't understand the position you're in, do you? This isn't some corporate fraud case where you can subpoena records and follow paper trails. This is the real world, where people with power protect their interests. And where corrupt cops help cover up theft? The slap came without warning, Morrison's palm connecting with Maya's cheek hard enough to snap her head sideways. Stars exploded across her vision, and she tasted blood where her teeth cut the inside of her mouth. Oops, Morrison said casually. Patient became violent during questioning. Had to restrain her for everyone's safety. Maya touched her burning cheek, understanding with crystal clarity that she was completely at their mercy. In this room, Morrison could do anything he wanted, and her word would count for nothing against his. But as she looked up at him, she saw something that made her blood sing with vindication. A small red light blinking on the smoke detector mounted near the ceiling. The kind of light that indicated active recording. Detective Morrison, she said clearly, enunciating every word. Are you threatening me to cover up HOA President Richard Blackwood's theft of community water resources? Morrison followed her gaze to the smoke detector, and his face went pale. What the hell? The door burst open, and Dr. Vance rushed in, followed by 2 hospital security guards and a man Maya didn't recognize. Tall, bearded, carrying what looked like recording equipment. Detective Morrison, please step away from the patient, Dr. Vance commanded, her earlier weariness replaced by professional authority. Mr. Walsh here has some very interesting information about this case. Tom Walsh stepped forward, his camera still rolling. Detective, I'm Tom Walsh, investigative journalist with the Herald. I've been documenting this story since yesterday, when I received an anonymous tip about corruption in Willowbrook Estates. Morrison's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon, but the security guards tensed, ready to intervene. This is police business. You need to leave. Actually, it's public interest business now. Tom held up his camera. I have footage of Ms. Chen's arrest, her forced commitment, and your assault just now, all of it recorded from multiple angles. Maya's heart leaped. The red light on the smoke detector. Tom had somehow planted surveillance equipment in the room. More importantly, Tom continued, I have independent verification of Ms. Chen's evidence. While you were busy trying to silence her, I spent the last 18 hours investigating her claims. And detective, what I found is going to make front-page news. Dr. Vance stepped protectively closer to Maya. Mr. Walsh contacted me an hour ago with evidence that this patient was committed under false pretenses. As the attending physician, I'm terminating her hold immediately. Morrison looked trapped, dangerous. You have no idea what you're interfering with. This goes deeper than you think. Does it go as deep as Mayor Hendricks? Tom asked quietly. Because I just spent 2 hours interviewing his former aide, who was very interested to learn about illegal water diversions that bypass the city's monitoring systems. Apparently, that represents significant lost revenue for the municipality. The color drained from Morrison's face. Maya realized that Tom had found the thread that would unravel everything, the financial impact on the city itself. This wasn't just about HOA corruption anymore, it was about tax fraud on a municipal level. "You're all making a huge mistake," Morrison said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The only mistake," Maya said, standing up despite her hospital gown, "was thinking I was working alone." Tom smiled grimly. "Detective, I'd like to interview you about your role in this conspiracy. On the record." Morrison's response was to turn and bolt for the door, pushing past the security guards with desperate strength. His radio crackled as he ran, but Maya could hear him clearly. "All units, we have a problem. The story's blown wide open." Dr. Vance was already on her phone, calling hospital administration. Tom continued filming, documenting everything. And Maya felt the first surge of hope she'd experienced since discovering that damned water line. But as Morrison's footsteps echoed down the hospital corridor, she knew the real battle was just beginning. They'd exposed the conspiracy, but the conspirators were still out there, still in positions of power. And now they were desperate. Desperate. People did desperate things. Tom lowered his camera and looked at Maya with grim satisfaction. "Maya, I need you to know. Your evidence was better than you realized. That water line? It's not just stealing from the community well. It's connected to the city's main distribution system. We're talking about a theft that's been going on for over a decade, costing taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars." Maya stared at him. "How did you find all this?" "Because 24 hours ago, I received a package containing copies of all your photographs, along with